Hey guys, well, you may be interested to learn that there is an international version of the FDA, a group of bureaucrats around the world getting together to create food standards for people globally. It's called the Codex Alimentarius, which is Latin for food code. And there is an American organization that has a seat at that table. And I had the honor of interviewing the president of that organization about what the heck is going on with food safety standards and should international bureaucrats be controlling the foods we eat. So, with that being said, I'm pleased to bring Scott Tips on to join. He's the president of the National Health Federation here in the US. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, I'm just learning about this international group. It's described on the internet as Codex Alimentarius is a collection of internationally recognized standards, codes, and practices and guidelines and other recommendations published by the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Health Organization of the UN. And you guys have a seat at the table with these people. I know that a lot of my audience doesn't trust the WHO at all at this point for our health safety. I think a lot of
And nor
people are.
should they. Nor should they.
So if you
So,
guys have a seat at this table helping to create food safety guidelines, tell me why so much of our food is so toxic and how we can fix that.
well, we've been working hard to prevent that from happening, Ivory. We've been at this for 28 years. And let's see, 25 of those years, maybe I've been attending Codex Alimentarius meetings from Germany to South Africa to Hong Kong to China to Chile to Costa Rica and throughout Europe and in America. We've devoted a lot of our effort and our time and energy to fight those god awful standards that they're putting out there. And in some cases, we've succeeded. In other cases, we haven't. But at least our voices have been heard, and people at the Codex meetings are understanding. Yeah, I'm glad you put that on the screen. It really helps to show what's a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah, that's the official website for this group. And
Mm-hmm.
it says they just had a World Food Safety Day last month.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
I understand that there's, I don't know, was anything accomplished at that meeting, first of all, last week or last month?
well, the World Food Safety Day is just a day, and they try to celebrate it. But what happens is they have the commission, the Codex Alimentarius Commission, which was created some 62 years ago by the WHO and the FAO. And in this whole little menagerie, you have the WHO is very pro drug, the FAO is more pro food. So if you have to choose between the two of them, the FAO is kind of the good guys and the WHO is kind of the bad guys. And we've found the FAO to be very helpful to us at these meetings and very neutral. You know, they both helped us, but they haven't tried to squash us in any way. Whereas the WHO has been a little more, a little tougher on us. And they tried to kick us out of Codex once about 18 years ago, but we beat them. But the point of this all is they're creating, like you said, they're creating food codes and food standards that are um, that are beholden on everyone in the world, basically, because 99.9% of the world's population is uh, is represented at Codex meetings, at least by government agencies. And then you have a whole slew of industry trade organizations, which are INGOs, international non-governmental organizations, that are there vying to push their favorite their favorite drug of the month on these food standards, or their favorite pesticide. And this is something that we've been fighting, tremendously. There's an upcoming meeting. There are all these committees, and there are like something like 25 plus committees. And the committee that's next meeting is the Codex Committee on Pesticide Residues, and it's meeting in Chile. And NHF, the National Health Federation, is slated to attend that meeting. And
That's your group.
yes, that's our group. And to argue against a whole plate full of new pesticides that they're trying to advance through the 8 step approval process until it gets to the commission level. And then it becomes a standard. And why is this even important? Because we have our national standards, right? So the international standards just apply to international trade in food. So most people wouldn't think this applies to us, but it does. And here's why. Almost all of the member state countries who attend these codex meetings, they've already committed to harmonizing the domestic laws and food regulations and rules to codex standards. They've already committed to that, including the FDA. So while
Mm.
all our little battles are going on at the national level, the really big battle that people don't see is offshore in these not very well publicized codex meetings where they're battling over the international food standards that will become the standards for the countries as well. The FDA in the Federal Register in 1997 already committed to harmonize uh, American food laws to those of Codex. So that's their mindset. That's what they've been doing. And some of our biggest enemies, opponents, let me say, not enemies, opponents at these Codex meetings are the Anglo-speaking, English-speaking countries, Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, sometimes the UK. When it was part of the EU, it wasn't so much, but now that it's broken free, it's swung more into the orbit of the United States and Australia and New Zealand. So these are our big opponents at these meetings, and they are not interested in healthy supplies of food. Instead, you can look at these countries' codex offices, and each country has a codex office, and they've all been captured that I've seen, not all, but many of them, the important ones, have been captured by industry. So they dance to the tune of the industry, whether it's Monsanto or Merck or you name it. And the worst offender of all is Australia. Ivory, if you went to a Codex meeting, you didn't know a single thing about it, you stepped into the room and you had to make an argument for or against a food standard, all you'd have to do is listen to the Australian delegate. And if he or she argued in favor of a food standard, you'd know automatically to oppose it. Or if he or she opposed a food standard, you know automatically to support it. You almost wouldn't have to do any other homework. That's how bad it is.
Really, and you think that's because of drug organizations paying off Australia?
Well, no, I can't say that. I think, uh, I mean, there might be in some cases, but I have no proof of that. Rather, there are many other ways that they can be influenced. One is they just inundate them with science, and the science is pro industry studies that have been done that are carefully tailored. And they dominate the Codex Science committees in the review. You have a lot of conflict of interest. You have revolving doors that operate. A lot of people in various uh, countries, they will then take a high paid position with industry. So they have a sort of a vested self interest to follow the party line for the industry. And so you have a lot of reasons, and not all of them are as direct as just being bribed. You know, actually, the Australian delegate, at least the one I used to have to deal with for a long time, was a very nice person. I can't imagine that she was ever bribed, but it didn't matter because she cleaved to the party line of the industry just as if it were her own. In fact, it was her own. And she argued for dumbing down nutrient reference values for vitamins and minerals. I fought her fiercely for 5 years on that. And we actually had a huge victory in 2009 where she tried to get it passed, or at least her predecessor did. I forget who was the Australian delegate representative at that time, but um, we argued for about an hour. And they wanted to reduce vitamin C daily requirement from 60 milligrams a day, which is already a laughable amount, down to 45 milligrams a day. I mean, what a joke is that? You smoke one cigarette and you're destroying that much vitamin C. And we were able to defeat that, but it took us, well, that one took us about 3 years, but overall it took about 5 years on that. We fought it to a standstill, and if it hadn't been for NHF, it would have sailed through the committee and been adopted by the committee and then adopted by the commission as a nutrient reference value for vitamin C. Same thing for magnesium, the same thing for selenium, and the
So
B
this
comp.
would be then that would go on labels around the world, bottle
Yeah,
labels
well,
saying people only need this very small amount of vitamin C.
that's right. And the problem is it wouldn't have gone automatically in every country, but in many countries and eventually all countries. But the problem is, see, you and I know, inherently know, and probably a lot of your viewers know, look, 60 milligrams is a joke. It's not enough. You need a lot more than that. Actually, if human beings were manufacturing their own vitamin C as our ancient ancestors did millennia ago, we'd be making 10 grams, 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day in our body, unless we were under stress, and then we'd be making even more. And so, 60 milligrams is nothing. That's like barely keeping you out of the grave and from having scurvy. 45 milligrams, even more so. So
So
we
what
know
would
that
inspire her to want to reduce that requirement
it's
or
cheaper.
recommendation?
It's cheaper for food industry to not have to put as much in, because keep in mind what the consumer is looking at is they're looking at, does it have 100% of the RDI, or what
Right.
they call it Codex nutrient reference value. They don't think 60 milligrams, oh yeah, that's X% of the art. They don't do that kind of calculation. They'll just look, oh, 100%, I'm getting
Right.
plenty, let's go party, smoke cigarettes, shoot up drugs, we're fine, all
Right.
these all these crazy things. So
I
that's why
see.
it's
So
so.
that so then the brand that makes the little chewable vitamin C could put less vitamin C in each chewable.
Sure, absolutely.
Less vitamin C, more sugar, which is cheaper.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you eat sugar with vitamin C, it competes to get absorbed,
Oh no.
because yeah, because it's all there's the thing that makes us humans vitamin C deficient is a defect in the gulo gene. Everyone has a gulo gene, GULO, capital letters. The gulo gene has a 5-step process for converting sugar into vitamin C. And most mammals have that. Your cat, your dog, um, everyone except for primates and guinea pigs, and there's some other animal, I can't forget what. But from a mouse to an elephant to a giraffe to a horse, they manufacture vitamin C. And the way
Hmm.
they do it is the gulo gene. They used to think that we lack the gene, but that's not true. We actually have the gulo gene. It's a 5-step process. So it has a start code and it has a stop code. So when it says start making vitamin C, it takes a molecule of sugar, or more than one, but it takes molecules of sugar, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, five, if it's working, 5 steps stop, and then there's a stop code. But something happened in human evolution or human history where the stop code stops at step 3 in humans instead of step 5. So the sugar never gets converted completely to vitamin C or even wholly to vitamin C. So it goes start, 1, 2, 3, stop, and it's not manufactured in humans.
Hmm.
And so that's the problem. There's a way to get around it. One of our NHF policy advisors figured out a way around it, but you have to kind of take special nutrients and it kind of kickstarts your gulo gene to go all 5 steps and make vitamin C. But that's a whole different story, and I'm getting off topic. But the point is that we need a lot more, a heck of a lot more vitamin C than we're being told, even by mainstream science.
So I just think it's stunning that you said it's all of the English speaking nations who are the most corrupted on food and nutrient and drug regulation
Mhm.
globally. What
Yep.
would it what is it that's causing English speaking nations to want to their leaders to want to be unhealthy?
Yeah, I think they're drinking the wrong water. I really don't know. But the funny thing is, I mean, your jaw would drop if I told you our most common allies, not always, but usually at these codex meetings, they're the European Union, because not on vitamins and minerals, because they have a god awful view on them. They think they should be treated like drugs. But but on pesticides, on contaminants in food,
Now,
on
when you say our allies, you're talking about your organization's allies or the US
NHF,
allies?
right? No,
Okay,
NHF. Yeah, sorry, I should
okay.
have been clear on that. But our NHF's allies at the Codex meetings, it varies from committee to committee. There are all these different committees. There's Codex Committee on Nutrition and Foods for Special Dietary Uses. There's Codex Committee on Food Labeling, Codex Committee on Contaminants in Food, Codex Committee on Pesticide Residues, Codex Committee on General Principles, Codex Committee on Import Export. There are all these
Mhm.
slew, and the NHF goes to most of those, but not all of them.
This
And
is
so
your group.
the point of my mentioning this is that the allies shift by committees because there are different delegates in different committees and different viewpoints in different committees. So, like in the nutrition and foods for special dietary uses, the European Union may not be our NHF's ally, but in contaminants in foods and pesticide residue, they sure as heck are our allies in the fight to keep these pesticides at lower levels or even entirely out of your foods, our foods.
So,
So,
I mean, it's pretty well known now in health circles in America that Europe has a lot cleaner, healthier foods.
yes,
So
yeah,
why I'm sure you guys at NHF are trying to get America on that level, but why is it
absolutely.
that America is more toxic?
Well, they're the agencies or regulatory agencies are more captured, number one, by industry. So there's a revolving door. A lot of these FDA people, a lot of the USDA, Department of Agriculture people, they have jobs waiting for them after they exit their offices at the FDA or the USDA. Um,
Mm.
and they're nice, cushy, high-paying jobs. Or they came from industry and then they are in the FDA or the USDA or the EPA. So there's point number one. And the other reason is a lot of the science has been captured by industry. A lot of the studies that are printed in the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, um, the uh, the mainstream journals, it's all hogwash, really. Even the former editors of the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet have admitted as such. They say, like a large percentage of the science is just nonsense.
But those
But
are the most respected journals.
they
People
are,
people
but
are gonna say you're lying.
it's like the Ivy League colleges are falling down now. They're being shown to be uh, just ivory tower nothings, and it's the same thing with the science industry and what it's doing. It's really a joke, and it's being revealed, and it's long past time that it be revealed as a fraud, as the fraud that it is. So what's happened is industry has infiltrated a lot of these science review committees at Codex and with the FDA and the like, and they have influenced the outcome of the decisions. That's why the Codex Science people can say aspartame is perfectly safe. Well, half of the people on the committee that said that, the science committee that said that, have received money or had jobs or been beholden in some form or another to the aspartame industry. They
Wow.
have a clear conflict of interest, and they should never have been allowed on there. And I mentioned this in a Codex Commission meeting, and the Codex Alimentarius Commission chairman, um, chastised me for having attacked, a fellow member of the of the commission, and but I'm used to this. I'm used to stating um, kind of risky positions, so to speak, and then having the committee chairman or chairwoman or the commission chairman or chairwoman criticize me and not shout me down. They're more polite than that, but at least try to limit what I say. Sometimes they refuse to call on me because they know what I'm going to say and they don't want to hear it.
Wow.
So then I have to make a big stink about it. And, in our journal, we publish a magazine, National Health Federation does. In our journal, we mention all these things about what goes on at Codex meetings. So um, we make sure to publicize it, and they read these because I've had the Codex Commission chair people comment on me on things I've read, so I know as a matter of fact that they read what I write because it's
Mm.
both online and it's in print. And a lot of times it's funny. They don't want to have bad press, even from us. So they treat us with a lot more respect than they used to.
Well, so with the changes at HHS here in the US,
Mhm.
you know, and for everyone, HHS runs the FDA and the CDC. So do you think with RFK Jr. in charge that things are going to change in America in regards to clean foods? And does does this international organization control RFK Jr.'s ability to do that?
Answering the second question first, no, it doesn't control what he's done. In fact, it's the contrary. He has the ability to help control Codex, but they
Mm.
haven't done it. I was being considered to be head of the US Codex office, and I could have made a whole bunch of changes at Codex if I had been appointed to that position. But I wasn't. They have Mindy Brashears in that position, but that's in a different department than the one that RFK Jr. controls. That's under the US Department of Agriculture because that's where being a food code standard organization, that's where they placed it. The FDA, though, does have input. In fact, a lot of times the U.S. delegate is a U.S. FDA person. He or she will be with the
Good.
FDA. So there's some room there. If RFK Jr. would just appoint me to be the FDA liaison person for Codex, then we could make some real changes. So then to answer your first question, second, um, can changes be made or have they been made? Or really, you said, can they be made? But I think some have already started to be made for the better. But, you
Good.
have to imagine the US is like a huge, say, cruise ship. And to turn it around, you don't turn a ship like that around on a dime. It takes some doing it. And a lot of it is controlled by Congress. A lot of it, there's a lot of inertia headed, you know, in a certain direction, and to turn it around, it's very, very difficult. So we've got to give RFK Jr. some leeway and some credit. He's made some inroads. He said some things I don't agree with, but then I'm sure I've said some things he doesn't agree with. But but
What don't you agree with?
his position on wearables,
Mm.
the wearable medical devices. I don't think they're going to be the godsend that he thinks they'll be. And in fact, to the contrary, I think they'll help link us into a digital prison. There's a great book I recommend to everyone called The New Abnormal, The Rise of the Biomedical Security State. And in the epilogue, there's actually the most interesting part of the book is, which you'll have to read, is a 32-page epilogue at the back called Seattle 2030. And it's about the everyday life of a ordinary man, a father, a husband in Seattle, and he has wearable devices, and he checks in, and he has all these conveniences. And we all know wearables will make life more convenient. And they can take the form of eyeglasses, the augmented reality, and hooked into AI that will tell you what you're seeing. They can be wristwatches. Most of them are these days, are wristwatches. Um, but his in the epilogue, and I won't give away the ending, but it doesn't quite turn out to be the convenience that he expected. And it's really a nice short little story, and it alone is worth the price of the book. But it's written by Dr. Aaron Kheriaty, and he's a good writer, and he makes the case for why we have to be careful because of the rise of the biomedical security state. And
Mm.
they'll use the excuse of public health, or now they call it population health countermeasures that'll be necessary to keep us safe from all these viruses and epidemics and all of that. And that will be, excuse me, that will be the excuse to usher in totalitarianism, which was what they're doing to keep us safe. The lockdowns, the mask mandates, the mandatory vaccinations, all of that. And that's what we have to watch out for. It's the rise of the totalitarian state by way of a biomedical security state.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are concerned about
Mm.
that after the pandemic. I have a question about free markets versus this all this government regulation. So obviously in the US, these agencies like, the FDA and the USDA, um, there are regulations for labeling what people eat. And so if a company wants to spray a ton of pesticides on its food, it's not allowed to list that food as organic, right? But here's the thing, that for the individual people, the average grocery store shopper, we're not regulated at all. We have total freedom to go buy whatever food we want to put in our mouth. So
Mhm.
this is when I hear this debate about people, you know, our food safety and whatnot, I think back to personal responsibility and the fact that actually we Americans have absolute freedom to pick a healthier food if we want. Now,
True.
how much are we being deceived about, by the packaging? I've heard even that a lot of the organic labels are not actually truly organic. Do we need to be more educated about just going to farmers markets or something? I don't know, but I when you think of free markets and the fact there are more people now who care about eating a clean food that's not full of toxins and chemicals, that, according to free market economics, that would cause companies to naturally want to shift to creating clean foods, to having an organic plot of land where they're growing this food that's not sprayed with anything. That way they can sell it that way. Um, that way they can have the label that way. I don't know if the FDA or the USDA would send people out to check whether that farm truly isn't being sprayed with anything. But can you just clarify some of the incentives and regulations that might be interfering with the invisible hand of the free market? Because if we grocery store shoppers still have total freedom to pick what we want, and we want to be healthy, then what's the problem here?
Well, that's that's a mouthful right there, and the answer would take really a long time. However, it's kind of what you're saying is music to my ears because I'm a radical pro free market person and have been for a very long time. And I think a lot of the regulations just get in the way, and people abdicate their own sense of responsibility for making food choices. And they push it off on the FDA. Oh, the FDA has said it's safe. I don't have to think about it. So I go forward with eating whatever the FDA says I can eat, and or the USDA or the like. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of those standards and a lot of the regulations, they're clunky. They're out of fashion. They don't keep up with the times. They don't use the right science to, for example, on electromagnetic field radiation, the FDA and others, they don't look to the harm that's really being done by this electromagnetic radiation. They just look to how hot is it making your skin? And they look at the heat elevation as the standard to go by. But people think, oh, we're okay because the FCC and the FDA and the others say it's okay for us to stand in front of this 5G emitter and be inundated with electromagnetic radiation. And the fact of the matter is, they aren't considering all the science. But I don't want to get away from food. The way to really approach it is to abolish the FDA entirely, to let people be free to choose, like you were saying. But the flip side of freedom to choose is responsibility. And so people need to take responsibility for their own actions and for making correct decisions and the like. And how can they do that? Well, they can be helped along by certification. It's like the underwriter's laboratory seal of good approval or the housekeeping seal of good approval. There will be organizations that spring up like that will do a far better job than the FDA, and companies that want to
Mm,
have a good reputation for food quality will want those seals of approval on their product. And that's what the consumer can go by. And they'll go buy it with kind of a far more, what do I want to say? They go with far more confidence than they would ever have in the FDA. The thing to remember is the free market is the best system in the world for providing any commodity to consumers. Socialism promises everything but delivers nothing. The free market promises nothing, but it delivers everything. It's not out there touting its big special abilities or anything like that. It's an organic process. And these organic, there are trillions of buying decisions that are made every day. And these decide what will be bought, what will be sold, what companies will succeed, what companies will fail. And like you were saying, Ivory, the good will rise to the top. And that's what happens in a free market system. In a socialistic system like what we have now in America, the bad rises to the top, not the good. It's like Gresham's law in economics in coinage, where bad coinage drives out the good coinage, which is what happened in 1965 in America when they changed from silver coins, pocket change, silver, to copper clad coins, and the copper clad coins all drove out the nice silver 90% silver coins. I witnessed that. I was alive then. I saw it happen. In fact, I helped make it happen because I saved all the silver coins I could. I didn't want the copper clad, and I was just a young boy at the time, but and I knew that much. So anyway, the point is that we want a free market system because we want the organic flow to operate. Now, the thing to keep in mind is people think, oh, but look at this. There's a thief over here, and there's a guy over here who poisoned people, and you'll never get a perfect universe with any economic system. The Marxian paradise that people seek does not exist. And it doesn't exist in the free market, and it certainly doesn't exist in a socialistic or communistic society, or certainly a centralized society, economic society. So, what you want to do, your goal isn't to have a perfect paradise. Your goal is just to minimize the mistakes that are made, to minimize the bad actors in your economic system. And the system that does that best is the free market system. What a lot of people don't understand, and I keep talking to this point until I'm blue in the face, is that they think, oh, we have these big, awful corporations, Monsanto, Merck, DuPont, Bayer, all these companies, and they're doing bad things. They're poisoning us and polluting the food and polluting the countryside and all of that. So what we need is a powerful, powerful government to put them in their place. This is ridiculous. That's just playing into Monsanto and Merck's hands. They love that because who are their thug enforcers? It's the government, because they've captured the agency. So they'd love nothing more than to have a more powerful government that can force us even more tightly to buy their food products and eliminate the competition, the healthy competition and all of that. So the goal, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but the goal should be to reduce the powers of government, get them out of the economy as much as you can, so that the big industry guys that currently dominate the marketplace can no longer do that, because they do it through their thug enforcers. No one forces you to go to Walmart to buy something. No one forces you to do that. But if they could, they would have the government say, hey, you can only shop at Walmart. You can only shop at this store. You can only buy Pfizer drug products, that sort of thing. But it's the government that tells you that. So we need to get the government out of our lives as much as we can. Just reduce them down, frankly, if at all, to just the three basics, police protection, national defense, and dealing with a judicial system. And that's it. That's kind of a minimalist approach. There are others who will take a more radical approach than even that.
So then it would be independent groups. Like if I and my health conscious friends want to create a group to double check whether this food product is safe and give our stamp of approval. It would be an independent setup, because that's the issue. If we're getting rid of agencies that are double checking whether foods are healthy, then someone could list their product as clean, organic, perfect, grass fed, and it's a total lie.
Yeah, but then you'd have a whole bunch of of oh, what's the name of that outfit that goes around and catches people in lies and stuff? I can't remember, Veritas or something.
Oh, that's
So
right.
you'd have a whole bunch of citizen journalists and the like doing their own test on the product, looking that
Yeah.
it's a lie and ruining the reputation of that company. And people would know about this. It would, if the news weren't so dominated by politics, and
I know, right?
then there would be more room on the front page, figuratively speaking, on the front pages for things like this. Pfizer has, or I'm sorry, let me say it another way. Uh, Monsanto has arsenic in its Roundup. A lot of people don't know that. That's why Roundup is so much more dangerous than glyphosate because it has arsenic in it. And
And
so they
and
would
is Roundup
advertise that.
on our foods?
Yeah.
You
And
know, a
oh,
lot of people
God,
don't even pay attention
they
to
don't
any.
even realize. Well, they've changed the formulation, I understand, on Roundup. Now they're using diquat, but I think the arsenic is still in there. I haven't
So
checked.
that's the thing. They get these companies get around whatever regulation is in place, right? We'll just switch a couple things up.
Yeah. Well, they get the regulations to support them in the first place, and they're
Now,
massive.
obviously, with these pesticides becoming unpopular, I'm sure these big corporations, these food corporations, are saying we'd love to not use this toxin if we could. But as a corporation trying to put out mass amounts of food, we don't know another way of preserving the food to get it to you. So so the corporation, the food corporation is saying we're in a pickle too, right? So
Yeah.
that's the nature of the free market is like they're doing this because it's the best way to create a quality food, aka a food that's not rotten before it gets to you.
Well, it's not the best way. It's one way, and they may claim it's the best way, but it's not. One, you can't get you can't maintain health off sick food. It doesn't matter. You are better off with other food. The other thing is they aren't addressing the waste issue. About 40% of food is wasted, even under their system. A lot of it is wasted. If we could just address the food wastage issue, and some people are doing that, some private organizations and even some countries are doing that. They recognize now that food wastage is a huge problem, and they're trying to take action to do that. What people really need to do that would help a lot is local, farm to table, local food cooperatives. And if people got more used to doing that, there'd be actually probably less food wastage, healthier food, and there wouldn't be the problem of the food going bad like these big companies are claiming it would happen if they didn't have, say, a peel. A peel is a new food coating that's going on fruits and vegetables to keep them fresh until the reaches the consumer.
And
But we
what's
have
that peel made out of?
Well, supposedly out of natural ingredients. We have an article that'll probably go in the next issue of our magazine about appeal, and we published something on it about 7 years ago when it first came out. But it's a coating, and you supposedly can wash it off, but you can't see it, so you can't see
Mm,
that you've either washed it off successfully or unsuccessfully, so you don't
right.
know. And because it's coming from major corporations like this, the first red flag goes up, and you think, well, is it really safe? They say it's safe, but is it really truly safe? And
Yeah.
we don't have enough information yet to know whether it is or isn't. But it
Wow.
does seem to preserve the fruits and vegetables. There should be a little sticker on the fruit that says appeal, APEEL, appeal.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
This we are seeing a shift in the free market and people being like, "Hey, I do have the freedom to eat what I really want to eat. It's just about how bad you want it, because the issue right now is convenience, right? The stuff at the grocery store is just so much more convenient to pick up,
Mhm.
and and the most toxic stuff is a lot of times the most delicious stuff. And so, but
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more people say, "Hey, I have a house with a yard now, and I have the freedom to put whatever I want in the yard. So I'm going to put fruit trees instead of planting a random bush. I'm going to
Hmm.
plant a tree that grows fruit. And instead of planting flowers, I'm going to plant fruits and veggies." And they're starting to eat their own things that they've grown
Yeah.
because they are becoming aware of how toxic these things are.
Yeah.
Healthcare in America, I mean, human health in America is a disaster.
It
Everyone's
is.
sick. Everyone's sick. And they're
Well,
realizing it's associated with their food.
I'm a big fan of having fruit trees in your yard. I myself have a persimmon tree, a lemon tree, a pomegranate tree, an apple tree, a
Wow.
walnut tree, and a special fruit tree called Nespero, which is like a small apricot. And let me think, olive trees. I have some olive trees. And
Wow.
what else?
And what part of America are you in?
That's in Europe.
Oh, you live in Europe.
Yeah, I'm talking to you from France right
Oh,
now.
wow. Okay. Because I
Yeah,
was gonna say, obviously, it depends on the climate for what kind of
sure.
tree you can
It,
plant.
yeah, it sure does. You're absolutely right. But this seems to support it year round. And the lemon tree is really prolific. I actually guilty of losing a lot of lemons every year because they go bad. I just can't get to them.
So France is a non-English speaking country. So from what I've
Yeah,
heard from
but
you, that means it has healthier foods.
well, it does have healthier food. I always have to watch what I eat when I go back to the U.S.
Wow.
and I feel like most of the food there is unhealthy, and especially flying on the airplane, and all you have is the food they serve you, and I wonder how healthy that really is. But uh, be that as it may, yeah, I definitely feel safer eating the food here in Europe than in the U.S. or Canada.
But and you're trying to get the US more on that level.
Yes, absolutely. Well, they have a principle in Europe called the precautionary principle. So the precautionary principle is if you aren't really, this is not the exact definition, but it's mine. If you aren't really sure that it will um, be healthy, then you don't adopt it. And so that's why they're very cautious about fruit, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, chemicals in general. But it also backfires in a little sense as well. That makes them more cautious about supplements, both vitamin and mineral supplements. So
Mm.
it has a positive side, but it also has a dark side. But the Europeans have generally been quite good on that. But they're being industry is making a lot of inroads into Europe. So you see Roundup on shelves now in feedlot stores and in what do you call it, nurseries and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And you see use of it. Like a neighbor of mine didn't want to use a weed whacker to whack down the weeds, which is an obligation here. So they just sprayed Roundup on the land, and
Mm.
that took care of the weed problem. And of course, that's what they do with a lot of the foods that they harvest in America these days. They'll spray Roundup on to help with the harvest.
Right. It does, these chemicals just really help with growing
Mhm.
food. And so these farmers are like, well, what else am I supposed to do? So I understand the struggle here. Like I see all the sides. End of the day, I think we as grocery store shoppers, as people who eat food, we have to just be more responsible for
Yeah,
ourselves. And just be
you
honest
sure
that
do.
we can't trust government agencies
Nope.
And we trust food corporations. And so maybe we need to, if we really care about grow our own food or buy food from our neighbor. My neighbor, actually, I have a neighbor with a pretty big strawberry patch. I asked him if it's organic. He said, actually, no. He does
Why?
spray. He does spray a little something on there because it's hard if you don't treat the food, you know, not only a weed problem but a bug problem. There's going to be all kinds of bugs devouring the
Well,
strawberries.
I just monitor my strawberry patch very closely, and when they're ripe, I pick them out of the ground. I get bunches of strawberries before the bugs get to them. Now, some I don't, admittedly, but most I
Mhm.
do if I go there every day and pick them off. But I don't have a big strawberry patch either, but it's enough to give enough for one or two or three people.
It's fascinating. Yeah, there's good reason why these companies do it, to
Right.
preserve the
There
stuff.
is. I mean, there's been a lot. That was the excuse for DDT as well. And there are things of that sort, but there are other ways. I mean, if you look at regenerative agriculture, you look at restorative agriculture and the no-tilling movement and all of that, you'll see there are better ways to do it. And actually,
That
one of the
does
things you
fascinate
can,
me.
one of the
Reg-
things you one of the things you can do is not monocrop. If you plant, for example, um, what is it, onions with your strawberries, then it keeps a lot of the pests away. You don't have
Mm.
to, your neighbor
Mm.
wouldn't have to spray. He just
Oh,
intersperses it with onion bulbs.
just gets a little
Uh,
more complicated that way.
It
I
does,
know.
but then you have
It's
onion
about how
seeds.
bad do you want it, right?
Yeah, but no, there's a whole conversation on this. And the regenerative agriculture people are winning the argument.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, just kind of give us a little more insight on what's next with the Codex Alimentarius, this international version of FDA. Is there any big changes in the works that we should be aware of?
Um, Frankly, at this stage, no, it's more of the same. So what will happen is at the Codex meeting in Chile, in Santiago de Chile, next month, September 2025, um, there will be a whole slew of new pesticides that are being considered. And remember, I said it's an 8-step process, so it's not just like that. You just don't get them approved in one meeting. It takes multiple meetings to get a standard approved. And so there are a slew of those, and I will argue against them. Maybe the European Union will argue against them. Maybe Russia will argue against them. Um, I'd surprise you by telling you some of the most consumer friendly countries are Russia, Iran, and India. You wouldn't think that,
Wow.
would you? Yeah. And the EU from time to time, especially, and sometimes Norway and Switzerland. But so they may argue against them as well. But what will happen is they will advance up the 8-step process. I'll argue against them again in Rome in the November meeting of the commission. I have two more Codex meetings to go to. Um, and So, anyway, that's really what's up there. The other thing that they're pushing that's real big is insect food, eating insects, which NHF has been opposing very strongly at each meeting. We're saying, look, it's so ironic you're pushing insect food when uh, when you work your rear ends off to keep insects out of food, to keep them from
Oh,
contaminating
I know.
food. So how do you reconcile the two positions? That's
Yeah.
one thing. The other thing we argue is, look, a lot of people are allergic to insects. You can't eat them, and a lot of insects, most insects are full of parasites. So it's not a safe
Yee.
safe food supply for people. And then the other thing they're pushing is Frankenstein meat, Franken meat,
Oh,
lab
grown in a
grown,
lab.
yeah, grown in a lab with kind of cancer cells really to make it grow.
Oh
So
my
you're
word.
eating like basically if you eat Franken meat, you're eating cancer cells essentially.
Eek.
So
Yikes.
that's another battleground that we have. But there are a lot of other ones too. Um, they just pop up because every time we turn around, there's something new that they're pushing.
And again, I feel like the free market is largely going to bat back these concepts of like eating ground up insects for your protein or greeting or eating lab grown meat because that's just not appetizing to us unless they sneak it into some of our ultra processed hot dogs and
Which
stuff without
they've
us
been
knowing.
doing already. Yeah, you're right.
Ah,
Thank you. They've already been doing it. They could give it a different name, and they don't say it's cricket meal, but they've created these cricket factories in
oh my goodness.
Ontario, Canada, and I think in Illinois or Wisconsin or Indiana, I can't remember, one of those three states, they've created, I think Indiana maybe, but anyway, they've created these cricket factories. They grow them, raise them, I guess you call it, and then they harvest it. And then they grind them all up into a cricket meal and they add them to your crackers, cracker flour, or whatever you eat.
Yikes.
So you have to really read labels carefully these days.
Definitely. All right. Any last comment you want to make?
Well, let's see. First of all, thank you again for having me on the program. And I just want to say that it's only through programs like yours that people get the real facts. They aren't going to get it from the mainstream media. So it's super important for people to listen to watch your programs and get the real news and the real views. And I would encourage people to join the National Health Federation. We're the world's oldest health freedom organization, 70 years old. Next year, we'll have our 71st anniversary, and we'll celebrate it in Dallas, Texas, with a conference in mid April. I think it's April 16th, 17th, and 18th in Dallas. So stay tuned. And we ourselves have monthly Zoom meetings.
I'll
Uh,
link the website down below.
yeah, and we have one tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So if you sign up, if you go to our homepage, sign up on our email list, you'll get notice of the meeting tomorrow, which will be at 12 noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. West Coast Time. Central Time, it'll be what, 11 a.m. And they're quite interesting. And you can participate. You get a chance to ask questions of the speakers and the like. So I
Wonderful.
hope people will do that. And thank you for having me on your program. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for shedding some light on these growing concerns about food and what's in our food. So appreciate that. Great talking to you.
Thank
Scott
you.
Tips, president of the National Health Federation in the US. All right. See you later.